Chapter 106, The Difference of One Thought. The South study is over. Everyone retreated from inside, leaving only a few major auxiliary ministers in the cabinet and a few close ministers of the Son of Heaven still inside. It seemed that Chen Lang had something else to say. Gu Chunfang was transferred back to the capital, so naturally he was not among them. Zhang Xia walked with him, a little 2 steps behind, still so silent. Gu Chunfang looked at his expression, and said as he walked, "Previously, Nan Shu suddenly proposed to let you sneak into the heavenly sect and pretend to be a Junchen person, without consulting you in advance. Don't mind in your heart. In fact, there is no way to negotiate in advance." It was impossible for Gu Chunfang to know in advance what Xie Wei would say today. Everything was just improvised. Zhang Shashi never thought that he would be involved in these complicated things so inadvertently. He had no ambition in this life, but he just wanted to set aside more time to accompany and take care of his mother. It was unexpected. After Xie Wei and Yan Lin rebelled in the previous life, even the forces of the heavenly sect were strangled cleanly, and they were bloodied from top to bottom, but until the head of the sect head fell to the ground, the legendary Dejun Mountain Man did not appear. If there is such a person, it is still so important. Can it escape from the sky to the earth and evaporate from the world? As a result, everyone in the world thought that the heavenly sect did not have such a person at all, but that the rebellious ministers and thieves deliberately made up such an immortal figure to coax the sect members to make them believe in the heavenly sect even more. Zhang Xia had been in contact with many cases related to the heavenly sect because he worked in the criminal department, and he was indeed ordered to find out who this Dujinchen man was, but every time he couldn't find out anything, and finally it was over. But he also had some doubts. It's just that this suspicion is unfounded, and it's a bit bizarre, and he never confides in anyone else. In this life, there seemed to be some clues. However, Zhang thought that those things didn't seem to have anything to do with him. He lowered his eyes and only said, "The adults have cultivated Zhang Xia in the past, and this recommendation is also a promotion, so I don't mind. It's just that since young Master Xie has mentioned this plan, maybe there is a suitable candidate in his heart, and if the adult intervenes like this, he may make young Master Xie mind." Gu Chunfang's eyes are already old, but they are becoming more and more transparent. He said with a slurp, "It is precisely because it was mentioned by young Master Xie that I want to recommend you." Zhang Xia suddenly raised his eyes and looked at Gu Chunfang. Gu Chunfang twisted her brows rarely, but she seemed to feel that she was a little too dignified, so she loosened her brows again, sighed with a smile and said, "Maybe the old lady is old, but she is a little suspicious. I always feel that this young Master Xie is very young, and he looks like he has no quarrel with the world, but his mind is very heavy, and the city government is really a little deep, and it is not as simple as face. At his age, I was still a stunned young man who hit my head and bleed in the court, and I didn't understand anything. I hope I'm a little more suspicious." Zhang Xia was speechless. Gu Chunfang only stretched out her hand and patted him lightly on the shoulder, saying, "This time I'm going to be biased against you. By the way, your mother has been feeling better lately." Zhang Xia said, "After moving to the capital, I got better, and I was trying to recuperate. It's just that she still can't be idle, and she always has to do something at home. This is also not persuadable." Gu Chunfang couldn't help but shake his head. "You are a filial child. If the few unsuccessful ones in my family can have half of you, the old man can rest assured." The sun was setting, and the two went out of the palace. The people who remained in the south study also came out of it after half an hour. When Xie Wei walked out of the palace gate, he was still full of smiles. But when he got into the carriage, Fang Xiao's kind and gentle expression slowly faded from his face and turned into a silent condensation. Asterisk. Lucien felt that his whole person was a little bad. He had just come back from the Shuxiang Inn, and the two news he could hear were still circling in his head until he passed by the Yonji Marquis mansion that had been sealed and stepped into the gate of the Xie mansion. Can the dry shares that have entered the salt works be resold by others? Ren Weizi went to the capital and solved the lifelong events together, and he was going to Qingyu and Bafu to propose marriage in the past 2 days. Why are things so incomprehensible these years? His brows were deeply locked, and he didn't pay attention to the other people in the mansion who greeted him, and when he was about to step into the Qin Hall, he remembered what happened here a few days ago, and he couldn't help but feel a chill. The foot that had stepped out was immediately retracted. When I looked left and right, the sword and sword books were not there, so I casually asked someone to move a chair for myself, and simply sat under the corridor outside the Qin Hall, pondering intently. Lucien is waiting for Xie Wei. However, unexpectedly, when Xie Wei came back, he looked up and saw that his face was not much better than his own, and his eyelids jumped. He said, "Something happened to the court. In winter, the garden flowers and trees wither. The withered lotus leaves in the lotus pond are rolled up on the surface of the water." Xie Wei's pale green robe was like a falling leaf. What happened during the discussion in the South study was also turning in Xie Wei's mind, and when Lucien asked, he said it with an expressionless face. After hearing that he offered the time to the emperor, Lucien's whole scalp almost exploded. Borrowing a knife to kill someone, what a plan. On that day, Xie Wei killed Gong Gai Cheng, such an important figure who was famous in the heavenly sect, and he also knew that if the heavenly sect knew about it, he didn't know what kind of bloody storm he would set off. Just Xie Wei's dual identity in both the heavenly sect and the imperial court, if one is not careful, he will be attacked by the enemy. If people know the secrets on his body, he will be like the person walking in the gap between two cliffs that are constantly closing. Sooner or later he will be crushed. Therefore, after the killing, it is necessary to immediately control the forces of the heavenly sect in Beijing. The obedient are taken for their own use, and the disobedient are cut off with coldness. However, the movement is too big, and there is no impermeable wall in the world. All the forces within the sect are fighting with each other, and the news to Jinling will inevitably attract the attention of the general altar. Xie Wei has a handle in their hands. His identity is the biggest lever. So all of this must be done without God knowing. Is obviously the Gong Gai Cheng who was killed by Xie Wei, but now he has been killed by Shunchen Fuyin when he encircled and suppressed the heavenly sect. Doesn't this immediately become justified? And if you continue to use this method in the future, it will be simply a plan of borrowing a knife to kill. I also knew that it was impossible for Xie Wei to eradicate those forces that obeyed his orders. Then, with the help of the power of the imperial court this time, all the forces in the heavenly sect that are more inclined to the Jinling side are eliminated, and the power of the Jinling side is weakened, and it will become easier for Xie Wei to control this part of the capital. Killing 3 birds with 1 stone, nothing more than this. Lucien couldn't help but slap his palms and exclaimed. However, the expression on Xie Wei's face did not change in the slightest, but only lightly made up the final result. The person who pretended to be a person from Junction was not him. It's a mask. Lucien was stunned for a moment, almost unable to believe what he had heard. But this. You didn't even raise an objection and just let things go? Wouldn't that be a bad thing? Xie Wei closed his eyes slightly and said, I think Gu Chunfang seems to be very jealous of me. Lu Xiandao, this old man has just been transferred back from other places, and he was the person who supervised the imperial history of Henan province in the past and lived for most of his life, and his inner shrewdness is certain. It's just that if you can hide it from the eyes and ears of the world, it will only take more thought and time to hide from such a person. But that mask, if you really hear something, the unlucky ones may not be our people. There are so many halls in the heavenly sect, and they are all secretly distributed in various places. Some of them are secretly obeying Xie Wei's orders. If Siewei pretended to be a Dujinchen person, he would naturally not hurt his own forces, but if Zhang covered it, God knows what trouble would happen. Lucien is a businessman, he has done a lot of business over the years, and he doesn't like to encounter this kind of thing that may be risky. His brows frowned, and he said, "Don't take risks at critical times. Since he wants to infiltrate the heavenly sect, this matter is also risky, so we might as well take the opportunity to kill this person. Death at the hands of the congregation, the court will think that the ploy is uncovered, and will not suspect us." Siewei was speechless for a long time. Lucien felt that this was the most appropriate approach, so he didn't think about it and said, "I'll go and arrange it." He forgot about Renwiazi and the salt field for a while, and patted the armrest of the chair, stood up and went to decorate. Then the next moment, he heard behind his back, "No." Lucien was stunned, looked back at Siewei, and almost couldn't believe his ears. If this person is allowed to pretend to be a person and infiltrate the heavenly sect, no one knows what will happen. If you don't get rid of this threat first, you will only be afraid of endless disasters. Why not? Why? Siewei actually had a face in his mind, walking under the dark palace wall. The little girl's eyes were illuminated by the lantern he was holding in his hand, as if it was about to burn with the firelight, burning and bright. "Do you like Zhangsha?" "Like." "Loved it, loved it." At this moment, he was in a trance for a moment, and then he looked at Lucien's solemn face, and said slowly, "This game is to invite you into the urn. Zhangsha wants to sneak in alone, and there will be no help. Since I have come up with this plan, the court will also let me control the overall situation. Zhangsha is an official of the imperial court, and if he finds nothing and dies in it, I am afraid that I may not be unresponsible and cause criticism. It's easy to kill him, but it's also a disaster. It's better to take a break and see what he can find out when he sneaks in. If he knows something he shouldn't know, it's not too late to find an opportunity to get rid of him before he returns to Beijing with the news." This kind of behavior is not Siejuan's usual style. Lucien was keenly aware that in addition to what Siewei said, there must be some reasons that he didn't know. However, he was silent and thought about it for a long time, and finally did not dare to ask too deeply. Siewei stood under the porch, finished talking to him, only looked at the late sky, and then carried him into the Qin hall. Lucien stood under the porch and did not move. He turned around and looked into the hall, his deeply locked brows raised, as if he thought of something, and suddenly reacted, "Wait, it's not right, Zhangsha didn't mention this. In addition to Gong Gai Chen, clean up the forces in Beijing, and even kill people with a knife, this is obviously a serial plan. When he killed Gong Gai Chen before, he actually told me that he had no plan. I don't know." Siewei stood facing the blank wall again. There was no lamp in the hall, and his back was hidden in the shadows, and it was impossible to see clearly. But Lucien could hear his clear and smooth voice. "Yes, I dare to say, you really dare to believe it. Lucien. Hayes, I didn't find out you were such a slut before."